So today I'm going to walk through some of the questions you have hopefully about the law degree here at the University of Adelaide, and then we'll be around to answer some of your questions where we can. I hope many of you have taken the opportunity to go across to see our law school. So if I could start with just the university. So as you probably know, the University of Adelaide is a leading university not only in this state but in Australia. It's ranked in the top 1% of the world. The university has produced magnificent researchers and educators across its years. It's developing career-ready graduates, people who can take the knowledge which we will give them to take it to the world, and we really want to emphasise that ability of people to go forward in their careers from their time at the university. In recent time we've developed advanced bachelors, and we're trying to have a vibrant and exciting campus, which on days like this you could always agree with. If we think about the law school now, the University of Adelaide Law School is 1883. You'll probably see a number of the students around with those t-shirts of 1883. It's the second oldest law school in Australia. It's a hotly debated question between our colleagues at the University of Sydney, but we say that we are the second oldest, basically on the basis that we started teaching people rather than just having it on the books, but something for another time. We were the first university to not only start its law degree, but admit women too, and it's a proud history of having female graduates. We have, I believe, an outstanding story to tell in terms of scholarship in the legal area and teaching. On different rankings, the QS ranking, we were 46th last year. I think we're about 50th in the world at the moment, so a leading law school. And that can be seen by the people we've produced. So, leading members of the profession, the current and the previous Chief Justices are people from our law degree. We have Justices of the Supreme Court of South Australia and beyond. Our graduates have gone on to other things, leading academics, Anne Orford, John Finnis. We've just had to change Justice James Crawford. He's just been made a judge of the International Court of Justice in The Hague, one of our great alumni. So our people come and take their degree to the world. We have 18 Rhodes Scholars, at least 8 Fulbrights, 1 former Prime Minister and 1 known comedian who's been through the doors of the University of Adelaide Law School. Probably tells you where you can take your degree. The law school has staff, and one of the great themes of our staff I want to project here is we want to have staff that make a difference. We want them to take their scholarship to the world. So members of my law school, the people I have as colleagues, are experts. The Fair Work Ombudsman's recently had 2 of the academics do significant work on the area of unpaid work, a real hot issue in Australia at the moment. Another of my colleagues you probably saw on Four Corners was looking at the role of visas and visas for people to come and work as casual employees. So people who are really out there taking their research not only to the students but to the world. One of my colleagues, Matthew Stubbs, of recent times, with colleagues at the law school, put in a submission to the body that's looking at the constitutional recognition of Indigenous Australians in the Constitution. A group of us were involved in that. And the model that we developed here at South Australia, at the university here, is one of the 3 models that's being actively debated. So very proud of the fact that we can take our research and take it to the world. So studying law. Could start with the obvious question about, what is law and where is it? So law, in its broadest concept, is a way of regulating our society. And where do we find it? Well, we find it in international treaties. And why am I going to go through this? Because it tells you the sort of things you will be studying. So international law, conventions and treaties is one of the foundation subjects we do for our first year students. They need to know where the law situates in Australia in the world. Constitutional and fundamental questions are also going to be studied. As a constitutional lawyer, I think that it's one of those bedrock subjects you need to know about. We'll also be spending a lot of your time working where law comes from, the statutes, the legislation that's passed by our parliaments, and of course studying the judgments of the courts, how they've interpreted, what does it mean. So the whole body of law there, and we will be studying it. So law, I think, is also an expression of what is a just society, or what is an unjust society in some ways. We must always ask the questions, what's the norms, what's the beliefs that sit behind the laws that we have on our books? And we want you to have that inquiring mind, that ability to question not only what the law is and maybe what it ought to be. And the rule of law is a fundamental, you'll hear it all the time, the rule of law, the rule of law. It's a concept of equality before the law that the law applies to all of us, no matter who we are and where we're from. So a foundation concept of law. I'd like to say something about a thing that I like to always emphasise for our students coming in. You are joining a legal profession. And we think about professions these days in many ways, but it's a profession of learning what the law is, and it's about taking the law to the community, because you have clients. I think it's also a question, if I was asked you what's one of the basic concepts of a profession, dedicated to service, contribution to the good, probably the best one, the important thing when you think about lawyers is honesty. Now, I know it's a great joke, I've heard every law joke going, but honesty is all it is. You know, if you think about it being a member of a profession, it means you stand for something. And honesty and integrity and ethics, that's it. If you haven't got those, you're in the wrong game. And it's a concept of an ethical lawyer is something that I hold very important. People who will stand up and make statements, often unpopular statements, because they believe in fundamental values. I'd now like to talk about where do you take a law degree? Well, law graduates in a global economy these days are faced with any number of options. We really have a borderless world. The flow of capital and the flow of labour means that the regulation of both by law, by conventions, is something we have to get used to every day. The debates about what should be in free trade agreements, it's all about regulation. It's about what law does. It's about economies and how they operate. I think one of the real challenges for law at the moment is the pace of change. We only have to think about it in terms of the area of medical law. You know, keeping up with what medicine is or science is telling us is one of the great challenges to the law, and we spend a lot of time thinking about what does regulation look like now and where does it be in the future. Something that I'm involved in is the Law Reform Institute of South Australia, and we're constantly wondering, is this law going to be out of date by the time 10 years has passed? So we are concerned about making connections that take integrity in the law into the future. Our students have been involved in international law. One of the things I just highlight there is they've been involved in competitions that have international law and have been quite successful. Let me talk about something that everyone's got in their minds, employment opportunities. It is a difficult time at the moment for employment of lawyers. I'm not going to pretend it's not. We know the statistics tell us that, for instance, the graduate surveys, where our graduates are 6 months from now, when they graduated, we know that about 70% of them have employment and about 27% of them are still doing study. So it's about 97. It's about 90-odd% of people either doing more study or in employment, and that employment may be a range of things. So it's still a degree that gives employment. I think one of the real messages I want to tell you today is that you need to think broadly about where you'll take your law degree. The old idea that there'll be one path for a person with a law degree, those days are gone. And in one sense, so they should be. We want people with those skills. Employers want those skills that lawyers have, and they want to place them in many parts of their employment prospects. So people still go into law firms, large ones, small ones, medium-sized ones. They take their law degrees to corporate life. A lot of people that I've spoken to today are wanting to do business law or corporation law or business combination, so they'll go there, banking and finance. A lot of people will say, I want to take my law degree into government or government regulation. There are lawyers everywhere there. Then there's the traditional areas of courts and tribunals and law reform bodies. A lot of our students are very interested in international law and international relations. When we went overseas to deal with, we took a study tour to The Hague, and we found a lot of our graduates working at the different international tribunals. So people take their degrees to DFAT, they go in those places. Community organisations. Lawyers are there everywhere. You know, some become academics, politics, communication, media, journalists. You think about some of the journalists you read every day, some of them did law degrees as well. So what I really want you to think about is that the employment opportunities are wide. In a legal career, there's the normal sort of types of commercial lawyers in Australia and beyond. There's the more traditional barristers working here in South Australia, as well as one of the options of human rights organisation. Regional lawyers. One of the things that I keep on hearing when I speak to law firms in regional Australia is that that's often where people don't go. A lot of people want to stay in the big cities, so there is work out there. But I should just say, of course, it's a difficult time at the moment, but I couldn't tell you what the economy is going to be like in 5 years' time when some of you people are graduating. So I think things are changing. So it's also possible to think about your degree to specialise where you want to take your degree. Some people have a wish to work in the international law and human rights area, and they tailor their degree to do so. Some wish to work in public law, dealing with government and how we regulate administrative things, and they take their degree there. Commercial law, family law, environmental law, criminal law, workplace relationship law. One of the things you'll find about your degree is that there are certain core subjects that every law student in Australia has to do, the so-called priestly 11, and then the electives is where you can specialise, where you can take your interests, where you want to take your degree. That often works very nicely with if you're doing a double degree. People can tailor their double degree along those same lines. So again, a point of sort of making that the law experience at our university means that people are doing a lot of different dynamic things. So we have students who go global. Human rights internships, some of you may have gone to that talk this morning. International study tours, and we'll have more to say about that. Exchanges, take off 6 months and go to one of our partner organisations. So you shouldn't see your degree as only being involved here in Adelaide. Nationally, we have people who do the native title internships. I was speaking to someone who just come back from Alice Springs, spending time up there as part of their degree over summer. Public law, and again we'll talk about these study tours. And locally we have people, their law degree, they take and work in the clinical services that we provide to members of the South Australian public at the Magistrates Court. So there's a whole range of places you can go. When you finish your law degree, and we'll have a talk after this one here, there's a requirement to do a graduate diploma as a pre-entry into the profession. The law degree gets you to one point, and then you'll have to do a compulsory graduate diploma as a finishing off approach. One of my good colleagues will be talking about this at 3:30 at this place, but I'm just dealing with the undergraduate and postgraduate degree at this point. A thing we are really interested about is how people make the transition from university to a career. And we know that there is a lot of nervousness and a lot of concern about how do I make that approach. So in the last 3 years we've been putting on what's described as the Next Step seminar. And this is aimed at 3rd and 4th and 5th year students. And we've run workshops about how you put your degree together, a dry run on how to do an interview, what the profession is thinking, and this works well with the GDLP group that we have. So we are alive to the fact that people have to start thinking about their career once they start their studies. Another thing I'm very proud of, and my colleague here has been a driving force to this, is that we also know that law students can be a very stressed group. And I don't know, is it you come to us that way or we make you that way? I have a tendency to believe that you might come fully formed. So we know that you are high achievers, and the transition to being a solo operator and the capacity to move on to the GDLP to practice. We have an honours in law. There's been a change in the system of honours under the Commonwealth regulation of it, but we have a system whereby those are GDLP entry into a small group of honours from this year onwards, and they'll be having some additional work to do to come out with honours. We'll also have we're in a transition mode where there'll be some credits given to those or some recognition of those of our other top students. So that's the basic programs: undergraduate, double degree, graduate entry and the honours. So the undergraduate 4-year program, if you were thinking about that, this is not the double degree. The bulk of these are school leavers, though not exclusively. In 2015 it was 95.2. People ask me what's it going to be next year. This year I'm not sure. Next year I should say. That really turns on a number of things, but I can give you last year. It'll be in the 95, I suspect. GPA transfer, those who are coming from another degree into us, we have about 0.5, so about above a credit average from those doing an internal transfer. We have a SAT test entry of 78 in 2014. And the Achievers program, which I spoke about, we have a minimum requirement of that person to have 80 from that school. If they fall under that, we make some other arrangements. So they're the pathways. Again, we'll take questions later on, or probably back at the law school if you have any questions about that. But that's the general entry into the 4-year. The double degree, it's a similar story. School leavers, the ATAR was 95.2, and applicants wishing to study concurrent law degrees must nominate their other degree. So, and here's the codes you'll see: arts, commerce, computer science, media, social science. So it's really something just to be careful when you're filling in your SATAC form to make sure you note the double degree that you're applying for. It's a coding thing. We can, again, just details here, but just be alive to that. And the graduate entry is those who've completed their degree and then start to do law after their first degree. And we have a GPA of about 4.5 in 2014. Every law degree, as I said, in Australia has a certain number of core subjects you must do. Everyone does them. Foundations of law, constitutional law, evidence, criminal procedure, contracts, equity. This is the list. So wherever you're doing your law degree in Australia, if you're going to have one that's going to give you the right of admission, you have to achieve those ones. As I said, in the next stage, once you've finished those core subjects, which you usually finish along the term of your degree, but on about third year onwards, you start to get electives if you're doing the double degree. And the electives where you can tailor your course. So we've made international law and practice a sort of a quasi-elective. It's nearly a compulsory. For some of you it will be. But then you could do environmental law, immigration, intellectual property, or you can move into the commercial law subjects, equity, insolvency. You can tailor your degree to where your interests are. And sports laws are going to be taught again next year, I think, as well. Let me talk about the law school experience and how to achieve something. I think you should enjoy what you study and study what you enjoy. If law isn't for you, don't do it. You know, we get a lot of people who arrive because they got the ATAR and think, maybe that was a bad idea. One of the combinations I always love is seeing medicine, dentistry, law. People put that as their 3 options. I can understand there may be those 3 combinations in life, but I think if law is what you want to do, study it. If you're thinking, maybe it's not for me, well, maybe it's not. If you hate it, don't do it. It's all about thinking, reading and writing. It's a language-rich course. It's working with text. It's making sense of some things that don't appear to make sense. It's developing a spirit and a mind of things. It's about being curious. It's about being intellectually open to ideas. I think you have to learn to see things from other points of view. I think you need to be bold. I think you also need to be measured. There's nothing worse than people who will argue everything and solve nothing. I think it's also about solving problems. The best lawyers I know are just natural problem solvers. They just find ways through. I think you also have to be compassionate. You have to be rigorous. You have to get involved. You have to challenge yourself. One of the things I find is when I'm most uncomfortable about a problem, that's when I'm learning. If it's easy, you're not learning. The challenge, the learning zone is when you're not quite sure. That's when you're learning. When you feel that uncomfortableness about the material in front of you, that's when you're learning. If it's simple, you're not learning it. So you need to develop that ability to sit and read and contemplate. I think you also have to develop the skill, and this is the real skill that employers want, people who can work with others, people who can work in teams. which can be a real challenge for personalities who have spent their lives working by themselves. I think working in teams is one of the real challenges we all face. So that's us. If you want to come and see more of us, we're across in the law school. You've probably been over there. We're happy to take some questions, probably outside or here at the front. That's all. It's a very hot room. It's been a great day. Thank you all for coming. I very much appreciate seeing you, and I hope to see some of you next year.